Good evening. It's another Friday night with me, Jackie Devoy. So it's good evening to all the ladies, gentlemen, and transgender folk, of course, especially the ones who think drag queen story time should be replaced with OAP story time. Wouldn't that be a nice idea? So a lot's happened since I saw you 2 weeks ago. Obviously, the whole lockdown files thing has come out into the open via the Telegraph. So we'll be talking about that later because we've all got a lot to say on that. That's intrinsically linked, although it might not be obvious at this point, to the whole midazolam story. So we'll be getting onto that too. We've got some amazing guests. We've got psychotherapist Linda Keane. We've got Tony Stoll, who you probably know from before, and he's been doing a lot with his campaign for Antonia's Law, and Dr. David Cartland. And a little bit later on, we've got the amazing Kate Shemarani joining us, so that will be great. I've had a few funny little incidents this week, one involving someone who's quite in the public eye called Anna Breeze, who's actually committed libel in some of her tweets about me, which is a little bit silly and naughty of her. So I've been talking to a team of lawyers about that, and they say, yep, they've looked at all the evidence that she's definitely committed libel. So I'm thinking of taking her to court, but let's see how that goes. The first thing I wanted to show you is, I'm a huge fan of Dr. McConkong and Monkey Boy, and I want to show you this video he put out last week, which basically sums up the whole lockdown files saga. So over to you, Doctor and Monkey Boy.
Too much to handle. Skullduggery, swindle, and scandal. A number of chaps exchanging WhatsApps. A deadly pandemic mishandled. But a tenacious heroine did leap. The dastardly words they did speak. Let us all scream and shout that the truth is now out. We have all of the answers we seek. No, we don't. Come again, Monkey Boy. You're still not happy, are you? I'm still not happy, no. And I'm also not a complete idiot. Jesus, Monkey Boy, please. Isabel Oakeshott has blown this thing entirely out of the water. We can all move on now. No, we can't. Why, Monkey Boy? For the Telegraph broke this bombshell of a story. The Telegraph. It's so damaging for the government. So very, very damaging. Is this the same Telegraph who reported that COVID could travel up drain pipes? The Telegraph who pushed every single piece of government propaganda. The Telegraph who questioned nothing about injecting children with experimental mRNA jabs and who continued to completely ignore the catastrophic damage being caused by these gene therapies. But, Monkey Boy! And didn't Isabel Oakeshott just help Matt Hancock write his ridiculous flop of a fiction book? The Pandemic Diaries. It's only my opinion, of course, Doctor, but I think Isabel Oakeshott has actually been assigned the task of diverting the public's attention away from midazolam usage and down the path of not doing enough testing or miscalculating percentages. Whoa. Conspiracy! Why did she say this then, when it's demonstrably untrue? Conspiracy? It's damage limitation. If the truth comes out, he's done for, so give him an agreed-upon scolding that fits the narrative and hope the sheep are contented. But he didn't do enough testing, Monkey Boy. It's here. It's right here in the leaked messages. It doesn't matter how much or how little testing was done, because the whole testing thing was a scam, an absolute fraud, an illusion, like the entire pandemic was. Monkey Boy! These messages just cleverly guide us away from the crux of the issue, which is that the testing was always meaningless, beyond useless, and designed to find things where no things were. But all those dead old folk, that's because they weren't tested. COVID clung on to them, infiltrating the care homes, killing them all. COVID didn't kill them. All the things that have always killed old people did. Plus, midazolam, morphine, neglect, isolation, fear, ventilators and DNRs killed them. This is simply diverting the blame away from where it should lie. But surely, if they had have been tested, even the asymptomatic carriers could have been weeded out, and the virus wouldn't have spread exponentially.
Always brilliant, such a genius. That's Dr. McConkong talking to his adversary, Monkey Boy. Interesting he mentioned the Telegraph. I've been speaking to a couple of mainstream newspapers today. One of them said they'd not replied to my previous 2 years of pitches about the midazolam story because I was sometimes very rude. I think they get direct mixed up with rude sometimes. So, and yeah, another paper said they're actually going to pass it to their news desk, which they said exactly the same in the summer of 2021, if I remember rightly. Yeah, but anyway, kind of progress. So talking of the press, are they complicit because they are refusing to run stories? So not because of the stories that they do run, but because of the stories they don't run. In the same way, with the lockdown files and all these leaked WhatsApp messages, there's a lot they haven't mentioned. I mean, Isabel Oakeshott did say that there are enough messages to fill 3 Bibles, so that is quite a lot of messages. But we're obviously not going to see them all, or are we? I mean, is this going to run and run? Are we still going to be looking at the lockdown files in 10 years' time? I don't know. So let me introduce my guests, and we can discuss this a bit more, because I'm sure they've all got a lot to say, because all these things are linked, not in an obvious sense, but like I said, the fact that the lockdown files probably will never go on to mention the midazolam murders, or even probably the jabs. That will say a lot if they're not mentioned, let's put it that way. So they're all linked, and all these people, all these guests have got a lot to say on all these subjects. So first we've got, let's get everyone on together. We've got Linda Keane, Dr. David Cartland, and campaigner Tony Stoll. So let's get them all on. There's the lovely Linda, David, and Tony. Hello, good evening to you all.
All right. Good evening.
Good evening.
I see David's got his medicine there. Is that a nice glass of rosé?
Not just yet, no. It's
bit early for that. So I don't know if you were listening to my friend who's obviously a real doctor, Dr. McConconk, talking about the lockdown files. So have any of you got any kind of strong opinions on what's going there? Can we start with Linda, maybe from a psychotherapist point of view? Do you have any views on what that's all about?
About what the doctor...
No, the lockdown files, so the leaking by Isabel Oakeshott of all these messages going on a couple of weeks now.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, have you hit on something there? Is it, or has your Dr. McConconk, whatever his name is, has he hit on something? Is it all a distraction? Who knows? I'm totally confused these days. I know is that they are avoiding the word midazolam. It's not being mentioned. They're talking about lots of other things, but not the fact that they actually culled the elderly. They didn't die of COVID. We all know that. They actually killed them, plain and simple. And my mother was one of them.
Yeah, we're going to get onto that shortly. I mean, that's absolutely tragic. How did we actually meet? You came to me, I think, because of your mother's death and what happened to her. Was that right?
I watched A Good Death, and then as I was watching it, I realised that you were just up the road from me in Shoreham.
Yeah.
So I got in touch, and we went and had lunch and put the world to rights, and here we are.
Well, you've done an awful lot there since then, campaigning on behalf of your mum and all the other people that have suffered, whose relatives have suffered similar terrible, dreadful fates. So how are you doing at the moment? Can you tell us about a few things that you've actually been doing recently with regards to that?
Well, I mean, I've got all her medical records, which I've had for about a year now. It's been very difficult because then my stepfather, who I was also caring for, although he was at home, he was getting jabbed and boosted, and the next thing we know is he got cancer, and he got a very aggressive form of cancer last August, died in October. So I've actually had to deal with the house, the estate, probate. So everything with my mother has been shelved, but it's still sitting there. I've got those medical records.
The interesting thing about those medical records when you got them, and David, you might be interested in this from a doctor's point of view, is that they were actually seriously, heavily redacted, weren't they? Pages and pages of black lines.
The GP records were redacted. The care home records were absolutely clear as anything.
Oh, that's good. That's something.
And they showed the overdoses of midazolam and oxycodone they gave her. They said that she had COVID. We didn't know. We couldn't get in to see her.
Terrible.
Yeah. So, and the interesting thing is 2 days before she actually died, I phoned in the morning and said, how is she? And I spoke to this psychopathic nurse who was administering the doses. And she said, oh, yes, she's okay. She's alert and responsive. When I checked through with her medical records, I noticed that just around the same time as that, I made that phone call to them. And I have proof of that phone call. I have it all listed. She was busy on the phone to the GP ordering end-of-life drugs. So, but of course, I didn't know all this until too late.
Well, Tony, that rings a few bells for you, doesn't it? I mean, that is pretty similar to the shocking story of your mum as well. 1 minute she was okay, and the next minute she's on.
Yeah, sounds very similar to mine. I'd go and see my mum every day at the care home looking through the window, obviously. And they had a big conservatory there. They would open the window, and I would practically put my head in, and I could just about hug my mum. Now everything looked okay, and then, as I say, I phoned up every day to ask how she was. And on the 17th of May 2020, I phoned up as usual in the morning with no inclination of anything. I was taking my dog for a walk. I'll phone the care home and say how mum is. 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, Sunday. It's like, sorry, Tony. I said, how's my mum? Well, Tony, can we call you back in 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes? I thought, yeah, of course you can. I thought, it's Sunday morning, care home, they're busy. Got the call back within 3, 4 minutes from the manager, the nurse manager who was on site that morning. And how she said it to me, I've gone through this many times in my interviews and with my legal team. She just said to me, Tony, mum's end of life. She said it as though I should have known.
Yeah.
In other words, why are you ringing asking how mum is? I had no idea. I fell in the floor. I fell on the street. I just fell. As far as I was concerned, my mum was the way she was all through the lockdown, which was fine. I'd go and see her through the window visits. I took her flowers. My children came with me. There was no issue.
Yeah. Of course, when you and I started talking, and I asked you what happened to your mum, and you said, well, she died of neglect. And I remember saying to you, but what actually happened to her? And it took us quite a lot of conversing and toing and froing before you started to realize there was something a little bit more sinister. I mean, neglect is sinister and horrible enough, but a little bit more sinister than neglect. And then obviously you started looking a little bit deeper. And then you found out that's when you got her actual drug charts and medical records.
Yeah, I remember before that, on the actual morning of that Sunday morning, I demanded an ambulance come for my mum. I demanded it because they invited us in to sit and watch our mum die. I remember the day before, an hour before, I knew nothing that my mum was even poorly. So to be invited in to watch your mum die has damaged me for life. So obviously I kicked up the fuss. I wanted an ambulance. I said, get an ambulance for my mum now. The ambulance came. And I heard the care home manager say, as we were getting mum out, it's COVID, it's COVID, it's COVID. 3 times he said it. Now, to cut a long story short, to condense it down, the medical records prove that there's a question mark. There's no mention of COVID. And it says possible pneumonia, chest infection. Now, if they knew it was COVID or whatever was wrong, because he was hounding it in my ear, it's COVID, why wasn't we told? Because they've broken a court order. In the meantime, at the same time, we were under court orders. So was the care home. If my mum had a sniffle, if she had a slight cough, they had to phone each member of the family, i.e. mum's 5 children, to let them know, which they always did in the 2 years previous she's been at that care home or was at that care home. So I'm not calling them. What I'm saying to you now is, on this particular episode during COVID, they've ordered end-of-life drugs, as we've got them on the medical records. My lawyer's got them on the 15th of May, if not earlier. So I got there on the 17th and was only told this. But they've ordered them on the 15th which is dated on the medical records.
Yeah.
They've broken the law on numerous accounts.
And this was 2020, 2021?
2020.
2020, that's right, because you were campaigning for your mum, Antonia's law, to get the cameras in the care homes. And had you started that campaign before she died? Or was that...
Yes, because she'd been in previous care homes and I'd seen numerous abuses. Well, we don't really need to go into the abuses, but I think it wasn't named Antonia's law. Since losing my mum, I named it in honour of my mum, Antonia's law. Of course.
And of course, when I first spoke to you, you told me that story of the time you went to meet Matt Hancock. Just before we talk about that, I'm just going to say to our producer, Gold Eagle, if you can find on Unity News Network, I wrote a story up for Unity News Network about the time Tony met Matt Hancock, which was basically a joke. If I remember rightly, I do remember the story very well, actually. You went to meet Matt. He told you to take your mask off, and you said, "Are you sure?" He said, "Yeah." And then was very chummy and sat very close and was talking very closely.
The guy was hugging me.
And then for the photo, you had to do the elbow bump.
Well, he's threatening people with prison if they don't wear masks and don't social distance. Yet behind closed doors, he's hugging me, puts his hand on my knee, talks in my ear. My lawyer was present. So I've got evidence. So come on. This tells us everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, we knew that very, very early on. Just going to David there now, when all this was going on back in 2020, what was your experience of this sort of stuff? Were you aware of these end-of-life protocols? Were you aware about anticipatory medicines? And were you aware that people were being murdered in NHS facilities? Did you have any awareness of that at all?
The first thing I'd say, Jackie, is hearing these two stories just sickens me to know what my medical profession, nursing colleagues, carers have potentially, I'll say potentially because I'm in trouble with the GMC for speaking out about all things COVID, so I've got to be a bit careful. But, in terms of answering your question, there was a lot of anticipatory prescribing, as we call it. The first thing that seemed suspicious to me really was at the outset of the pandemic. There was a lot of work, even when we were locked down early on, that we were nipping out to little old ladies' houses, care homes, etc., and assessing patients on the basis of, it was called a treatment escalation plan. And I'd never heard of that term before. And it was essentially a trigger where you would go around. There's a bit of feedback. I don't know if you can hear that as well.
It's not too bad.
It's not too bad. So you would go out to Doris's house, for example, or Bertie's house, and you go out. And this is when we were locked down. And you would go out, and each GP would have an assessment to make as to looking at the person, working out whether they're, if they were elderly and frail. You made an assessment in your head, which was essentially, do you think you'd be surprised if Doris was alive in 6 months? And if your answer in your own mind's eye was that you'd be really shocked if she was still around, whether she got dementia or just looking very elderly or whatever the medical history, then you could go ahead and fill a TEP form, a treatment escalation plan. And what that instantly triggered was a chain of events like the DNAR went in place. The treatment escalation plan was essentially if the care home rang up and said, Doris is really unwell, she's breathless, she's coughing, there was a ceiling of treatment put in place. And that ceiling of treatment was often without the family's knowledge, for starters, without even the patient's knowledge on some occasions. I've seen it with my own eyes. And, go and make that judgment and trigger all of these things, the DNAR, that would disseminate out to the ambulance crew.
Can I ask you, as a doctor, as a GP, do you see the elderly as just this mass of grey-haired old people, or do you get to know them personally? Like when I've spoken to Tony about his mum, amazing woman, also to Linda, whose mum was absolutely stunning and an amazing artist, these fantastic people who are all, individuals. But I think that from what I can tell, a lot of the medics, not you, I'm not saying you, but generally, they don't see people as individuals. They see them just as useless old people.
Well, it's a bit like politicians, Jackie. You've got career politicians and vocational politicians. The same here. You get vocational doctors, and I would class myself as that. I really do stand by my Hippocratic oath. hence I'm speaking out. I really do, remember that the question in, med school, why do you want to be a doctor? I remember the exact words I used, and I've remembered those words all the 15 years since. But what I've seen over my last 2-3 years particularly has been a massive number of career doctors that are there for getting up the hierarchy, getting there for the salary, for lifestyle, etc. And in direct response to your question about the elderly, a proper doctor, a vocational doctor, a doctor that's become a GP to be a cradle to the grave doctor for everyone from babies through to the end stages of life. That's what you're there for. But yeah, as you mentioned, it seems to be seen that the elderly are a burden on the system.
Yeah,
it's just not right, is it? It's just not right. It's actually sickened me to hear these two cases tonight.
So we've just got that story pop up there. Tony, do you want to tell us what happened on that day?
Yeah, I arrived into Suffolk as I was invited by Matt Hancock. He'd read upon me personally, and he agreed to meet me. And my lawyer met me in Suffolk. He travelled, I would say, travelled up from London, and I travelled down. And we met outside Hancock's office. My son came with me. We waited there. We let them know we was outside of his office. We had good time so we could discuss in the car what was going to happen, what we thought was going to happen. Didn't happen what we thought, obviously. I will say his right-hand lady came out. She said, right, Matt will be seeing you in 5 minutes. Can you make sure you've got your masks on? Whatever you've got with you, can you put it on? Your Martian outfit, whatever you've got. I was joking on that, but that's what it sounded like. So she comes out, she escorts us in, and we expect, as probably what you would have expected back in 2020, in a so-called height of a pandemic, which I didn't agree with anyway, but to get in to see him, I would have worn a Martian's outfit, if you know where I'm coming from here. I didn't care about anything else. I knew, because I was working down the line as to where I am now. I needed to meet him. I didn't care less if he helped me, because I knew damn well he wouldn't. But I thought, if he helped, it's a bonus. But nobody could get to him. Even my lawyer said to me before we went in, Tony, how did you get this meeting with him? And I said to my lawyer, that's for me to know and you to find out. So we walked in, she escorted us in. We were a bit apprehensive, thinking, this is the guy that's on the telly. And remember, I'd lost over 2 stone in weight. I was grieving my mum. I still am, but I'm fighting now. But this was weeks after losing my mum. So he had me at a very vulnerable state when I met him. So we walked in, and the first thing was the girl ushered us in. There's your hand gel, there's this, there's that. As you can imagine, we did all what we were supposed to do. The door opened, Hancock stood there. And even now, when I look back on it, if I was the way I am now, I think I'd have ended up in prison because I'd have got him. I was in a grieving mode. If I was the way I am now, I'd have knocked him straight clean out for doing what he's done.
You're not alone with that feeling.
Exactly. So I walked in and I was very polite. My lawyer came in and Matt Hancock looked straight to shake my hand. And he went, better not do that. And I thought, what is this? Is this really the real Matt Hancock? It's like a circus. So again, long story short, he came sit down, we sat down. I expected a long table. Matt at one end, me and my lawyer at this end. I really did. Now, there was no table except on this side here, and his secretary went to the end, and she was possibly dictating. I don't know. I sat down, my lawyer sat here, and Matt Hancock literally sat in front of me. I thought, God, this is really weird. It was just weird for me, and my lawyer looked at me. These are a top legal law firm in the country, and even he was, what is going on? So to cut it down short, to condense it, he asked me what was happening and what I told him. And I told him, sorry, I got so far into it. And then obviously talking through a muzzle, he didn't have one on, my lawyer did. I broke down as I was talking to Matt Hancock, and he came across to me and he put his hand on my side. He said to me, take your mask off. Now, I'll be honest with you, as I've told every reporter on the Sunday story now, I didn't take it off. I was shocked. I actually felt a little bit like I'd frozen, if I'm honest with you. Yeah. I looked at my lawyer, and he felt the same. And he's a lawyer. So I carried on. And he could see I was breaking. And then I could see Matt Hancock. he actually looked like he was going to start with tears in his eyes. He came right up to me, into my ear, hand on my shoulder. He said to me, "Take your mask off. It's not needed." So I looked and I took it off. We'll see on the picture. I took it off, put it on my sleeve here. And I sat down. And he got his hand under his chair, and you know, as you run your chair and pull the chair with you, when you move closer to somebody, his knees touched my knees. That's how close we were. I actually thought, if I was the way I am now, I'd have said to him, "Mate, you can sit on my knee if you want to." This was in a different situation as I'm in now. I'm in fighting now. I've started legal action. I'm a different Tony to what I was back then.
You are. I mean, you're even a different Tony to last summer when I was interviewing you for the film.
I want to fight him. I think we should get in the ring, me and him now, I believe, and have it as a public and donate the money to all these people.
There'll be a queue around the block,
yes,
you know.
And donate the money to all the victims that he's killed.
Yeah. Let me just ask Linda. Linda, what are your views on Matt Hancock?
Well, I'm just sitting here thinking as Tony's talking,
I'll
hold him while you hit him.
So there you go.
And I've got quite a good punch. So
yeah, so you're not a fan. Do you think anyone's a fan of Matt Hancock anymore?
I despise the man.
You're always going to get the odd bods, aren't you?
Very odd ones, yeah, very odd. So, David, what are your views on Matt Hancock and the recent revelations in the lockdown file expose? Do you think it's all theatre, or is it a pantomime, or do you think this is a genuine heroine stepping into the foray and you know, revealing all? Oh, David's frozen. Oh, I'll ask Tony that question then. What do you think?
I like that question. I quite like the end bit you said. What was it you said, Jackie?
Oh, I can never remember what I say. Just ask Anna Breeze, you know.
But I think you're right. I think they've made errors. I think they've made an error.
But do you think this is
I think them inviting me in, I think it's stabbed them a little bit, because I've just emailed Matt Hancock last week. Yeah, and I got a response. I told Fadi I got a response from his secretary immediately the next day, which I was really shocked at. So
since you met him in October 2020, have you spoken to him since? Because he said he was going to support the campaign and was on side and cried and put his arm around you, rubbed knees with you, you know.
He was too busy cavorting behind doors, wasn't he?
Yeah, and also you know, going on I'm a Celebrity, obviously, where he was obviously saw himself as some kind of love god, you know. But so basically he didn't help you at all.
No, but I've just emailed him last week.
Yeah.
I got an email back from his secretary. I tagged them both in, his secretary I know personally and him. So I sent it to both of them. And I got an email back straight away, and I've told my lawyers, and the press seemed quite interested in this, because obviously I knew he wouldn't meet me. I just wanted to see if I'd even get a response. I'm surprised I got a response.
Yeah.
And what they sent me was what I expected. I was quite glad to get it. They're saying that he can't meet me because I'm not his constituent. Yeah. Now I wasn't his constituent 2 years ago either.
No, yeah, exactly.
So I've sent an email back with the GB News and the Nana Akua GB News, both of them that I've done recently, and I've sent them to Matt Hancock and to his secretary, his PA. And I've said, I think it's in your best interest that you meet me, because I'm taking you all the way. And I said, I think it's in your best interest for you to meet me. I've not had a response yet, but she's not back from her holidays until next week.
I mean, you've been absolutely fierce with the media. You've been all over the media, and you're working so hard and doing an amazing job. I'll get back to you in a minute, because you've been doing some filming this week that I'd like to talk about as well with Iconic. I'm just going to ask David quickly on his views on Matt Hancock.
Are we before or after the watershed?
No, you can say whatever you like.
It's just a useless idiot, isn't he? It's just from the very top, you know, that the government is full of them, but he seems to be the fall guy in this circumstance. He's just the pantomime villain, isn't he? And he plays it very well. He's an evil man. There's no doubt about that. It sickens me that he has the profile that he does, in that, you know, things like I'm a Celebrity, you know, people were blissfully unaware of what we're talking about this evening whilst he's eating kangaroo testicles and wherever he did. It's absolutely sickening to watch. So just, there needs to be justice served on this man. I know he's being thrown under a bus big time, the same as Fauci is, but just evil. That sums it up.
So do you think all this, the lockdown files that the Telegraph are putting out and Isabel Oakeshott, you think it's all part of a big pantomime and we're never going to see the full extent of it? Is this just a detraction and a distraction from what's actually really been going on? Like, I think my actual feeling is that they're pushing our attention onto these minor misdemeanors in an attempt to totally detract and distract from the real crime, which is crimes against humanity, which involve the jabs and the euthanasia. I don't know. That's an extreme view, but I'm prone to those. What's your view, David?
Yeah, exactly that. They're drip feeding this out. There's a lot of coincidences this week. In particular, we had Jeremy Vine and the guests mysteriously went off on a monologue. Then we've had the Congress in the USA also that have also been releasing things such as the censorship on social media, the gain of function has been pretty much confirmed that that's a thing. So as well as the Twitter files all seem to be not neatly fitting into the same news week really. So I don't think there's coincidences in journalism, is there? And I think there is a controlled release element to that. That's just my opinion. And there are distractions within it. But for me, any media coverage of this, any cracks in the dam, are encouraged by me wherever they're from. There's shadiness around the journalist that broke the story and all the relations and stuff. But that, to me, like some of the doctors that were late to the party, as long as the story is a momentum towards an exposure of all of this evil, there's so much, there's bigger fish to fry, i.e. the midazolam stuff and the vaccine injuries and the things like that, that will come out, I'm absolutely certain, in the next coming weeks. I think that's my opinion.
Yeah, welcome to Kate. We've got Kate Shamarani in the building. Hello.
Hi,
are you competing with my pink lipstick with your red? Honestly,
this is tropic, non-toxic. 60% of lipsticks on the US market are full of lead, which is a neurotoxin, goes to the brain. So if you're a guy and you're snogging a chick, you're getting your brains fried with this stuff. So buy from my link.
Let's get straight in there. So have you met everyone? Linda, because we spoke at Burgess Hill, you, me and Linda. You obviously know David. Have you met Tony before?
We've recently conversed, Tony, haven't we?
Excellent. So we're all friends. That's great. So we're just talking about Matt Hancock. But we've only got 2 hours.
Want to bring him in?
I was thinking of inviting Dr. Luke Evans on this evening, but I just thought, well, he's not even going to reply to me, is he, basically? But
I wouldn't personally be seen on the same platform as him. He sat in a meeting, or whether it was on camera, with Andrew Sabinsky and Matt Hancock. Why would I even be in the same room as 3 people discussing the order of 9.9 million milligrams of midazolam that was used within several months? As far as I'm concerned, I shouldn't even be in the same room as them unless it's a courtroom as they stand in the dock.
Well, that's what I'm hoping is going to happen at some point, because a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, like, for example, I made the film A Good Death with Iconic Media a year and a half ago. It was released in December 2021. And I kind of thought, they're probably someone's going to sue over this, right? But they can't, because it's the truth. And it's been 18 months now. And we were saying in that film, the NHS staff were murdering people in their beds and no one sued. Why not? Because it's the truth. It would be brilliant if they did, because we could get to court. What do you think, Kate?
Well, I posted today, and I always tag you in most of the things. The NMC, the Nursing Midwifery Council, taken over by the government in 2001, and the GMC, both have charitable status. How did they get that charitable status? By stating that they save lives. Well, in order for a patient to be placed on what is, I believe it's NG 31, which is an end-of-life care pathway, the patient must be diagnosed with having a terminal condition. And terminal, as I understand it in this country, is anything critical frailty score 9 but that they can be alive and well for a year, and that's classed as terminal. And in that NG 31, they have to have their essential, nutrition and also their hydration taken into consideration. And you cannot hasten their death, and the antidote to midazolam must always be within easy reach. Not that you have to go and get the member of staff who's carrying the keys to have this flamazanil. They've got to be in easy reach, like you would in the emergency room or in theatres. Now, these patients entered those hospitals. They were put on NG 163, and then later it was changed, and they were given, as we know, morphine with the midazolam. So that's all bets are off. I believe it's 1 milligram per kilogram over an hour. So if you weigh 50 kilograms, that's 5 milligrams. Then by the time you give it with the morphine, synergistic effect, everything, all of their OBS went down. No one was checking their OBS, their SPO, their oxygen saturation level, their respirations, their pulse, their BP. No one was checking it. Dr. Dave Cartland will confirm all of this. This is what you would look for if you were giving someone that. I spoke to an anaesthetist. I've spoken to one in Australia. And he said, when you give morphine, all bets are off when you give midazolam. It has to be in a controlled environment that you would give those together. So why would you be giving that in a care home or even in your own home with Bob the Builder? According to that document, anybody could give it, especially if they were willing to do subcut. So what you see here, it doesn't matter who we point at, Jonathan Van Tam, Matt Hancock, ultimately, according to the GMC code and the NMC code, the book rests with those healthcare professionals. So if they have a charitable status stating that they are there to say they save lives, I put it to them that I would disagree, and I believe that there is now mounting evidence that they have actually taken lives under the guise of those registrations. So one, do they have their status revoked? Yes, they should, because that's taxpayers' money. That's the first thing. And two, again, one would have to consider every single nurse and doctor who has signed or ticked the box, as it is now, on the GMC and on the NMC to say that they are up to date, adhering to the laws of the land, understand the drugs they're given, understand their scope, their professional practice. So they are indeed accountable. So I don't think we can just say straight off, it's the government for saying do this, or indeed the one doctor that was then to sign it off when we had the 11 doctors, 10 plus the one writing it, who said, you can't do this. This is going to kill the patients.
I was going to ask you, Kate, what do you think? I wrote an article today, had it published this morning on Iconic. I don't know if Gold Eagle can pop that up again. And I'm asking, are the mainstream media complicit in these deaths, in these murders? And my argument is actually, of course they are. What's your view on that?
Well, I think when you go into a court of law, it can't be what one's personal opinion is, or is what do you think? Who's had a hand in this? What you have to do is you begin with the absolute fact, and the absolute fact is we have a victim. Yeah. And then the next absolute fact is we have the murder weapon, because we know that these patients were given 5 to 7 times the dose. Their comorbidities, their weight, their age, none of this was taken into consideration. So we have the murder weapon. So who was the perpetrator of this heinous crime? Well, we also have that as well, because they signed, dated and timed that they gave it. Well, they're the absolute cold, hard facts. Were people complicit in the fear mongering and everything else? Well, yes, they were. But could you actually find them guilty of taking a life? And I think one has to be very careful when we start putting that dragnet out to include everyone, because what ultimately that will do is dilute a crime. Yeah. And so I think one has to take a very hard, cold, fast stand. Is what are the absolute, unequivocal facts?
Yeah. Always, yeah. Can I just ask Linda, how do you feel hearing Kate saying all this, in especially in relation to your mum and what happened to her? How does it make you feel?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've heard Kate speaking like this before, and I found her very inspiring, I've got to say. Yeah, I mean, I've heard this before from her. Nothing surprises me anymore. One thing I do want to add is the fact that there was abject cruelty doled out to these old people. I mean, what I discovered in some of my mother's medical records was about 4 days before she died, there was one particular very young carer who she obviously had a very good relationship with. And her entry into the notes that morning said that she walked in and found my mother saturated in urine. Her entire bed was soaked in urine. Yeah. She was just wearing a nightie. She had no covers on her. She was shivering with cold. And she said she'd been like that all night because she had come in. She had left her the night before. Nobody had come in and tended to her. So my mother, I mean, that is just crimes against humanity as far as I'm concerned. You wouldn't do that to a dog, let alone a living person. That made me angry, more angry than probably anything else.
And same with Tony as well. I'm just trying to include everyone in the conversation. Tony, your mum was subjected to terrible neglect as well. Are you able to talk about that?
Yeah, in numerous care homes, she had neglect. She had one of her. I went to visit on one occasion, and I noticed she was diabetic on insulin. So obviously, your feet are very important. She was sat in a wheelchair with no shoes and socks on. So for me, straight away, that was it wasn't nice. Regardless, there's no dignity there for me. You know, you treat somebody how you want to be treated. Now, I noticed on the heel of her foot, I went down to my mum's level. I always did. I never spoke down to her. Came down to her level. And because she had no shoes and socks on, I noticed there was a shiny, perfect circle just glazing and looking at me. This is going back to 1 or 2 care homes before the end care home. And I thought, God, what is that? So I looked at that, doesn't look right to me. So I got up and I said to the carer, I'm just going to pop out somewhere. We're back in 10 minutes, look after my mum. And across the road was a diabetic clinic who I know personally. Yeah. Now, a long story short, mum was taken straight into the hospital. She had a grade 4 ulcer on the heel of her foot. She couldn't put any weight bearing on it for, I think it was going to be 6 months.
Yeah.
Couldn't walk after that again. They're digging it out, went right down to bone. Grade 4 is amputation level.
Yeah, yeah.
On the inside and works its way out. So she was down to bone. Now that for me, regardless of her losing her foot, she never did, but just the fact that she had it was heartbreaking for me.
And nobody noticed.
Yeah. Or paying astronomical amounts of money. And that's what they call care, is it? Now, because I did all this and I watched my mum, you know, if they cared for her, loved her, I've nothing to watch, have I?
No.
I got placed on a court order, a gagging order, just to silence me. Now, that didn't silence me. I told them in the court I'd go to prison. I'd have a week in prison if you like. I said, within a week, the press will be everywhere. You know, put me in if you like. That's my mum. I'll fight tooth and nail for her. Yeah. I've lost her, as you know, so now I'm doing it now. I've now got legal action. I want to read this here to you. It was a quote from my lawyer to the BBC.
Please do, yeah.
Listen to this. It sort of sums it up in a statement for me. It says here, the lawyer dealing with the case, Fadi Farhat from Gulbenkian and Donian, told the BBC, as a matter of law, there is a presumption in favour of treatment which would preserve life and prolong life, irrespective of one's age or condition. Therefore, to deviate from that presumption means a patient or family members should be consulted as soon as that decision is made or even contemplated. He adds, what is particularly concerning for me is that this case occurred at the height of the pandemic. That should worry everybody because it demonstrates that rights can be suspended in times of crisis when the very purpose of legal rights is to protect us during times of crisis. They never did that. They've broken the law big time.
Yeah, amazing. And just going over to David now. Obviously, you when did you first become aware of this terrible stuff that was going on in care homes? When did you become aware of the end of life guidelines, the NG163, the NG191? When did that first come into your sphere of vision?
Well, in terms of the guidance itself, that guidance for me has always been used for palliative care in cancer. That's the only time I've ever used it in my career. So, you know, the fact that we were doing these anticipatory meds for things outside of cancer didn't sit right with me. It was just the fact that they were elderly and you'd done this TEP assessment, and you know, if they were in the future to get a pneumonia and the TEP was that they were to stay in the nursing home or care home setting, then you kind of pre-prescribed it ready, and then they had the instruction manual then to go towards, you know, giving this treatment out to them. And again, who's making that decision? It didn't seem to. And obviously, this is behind closed doors as well.
When did you become aware of NG163 and that it was being used? It was a COVID protocol being used to actually so-called treat COVID patients. And it was actually just the LCP in disguise, the Liverpool Care Pathway in disguise. When did you? I mean,
it's after I've been pushed out of practice. Unfortunately, that guidance itself was kind of, Kate actually sent it to me about 6 months ago. I think it must have been now, and it's the first I've heard of it being used as a COVID protocol. It was very kind of behind. You know, I've dealt with a few people in ITUs, and there's very much a mystery around this COVID protocol. And in inverted commas,
it's not a mystery at all, is it, Kate?
Well, no.
I think from what I've seen and the notes that I've read, I've got some terrible hospital notes of a patient who was in his early 60s, and at autopsy, he had all his own teeth. So one could hypothesize on that front that he was in good health if he had 32 teeth in his early 60s. And he, without a doubt, there was no difference at all to what happened to him ultimately than the Liverpool Care Pathway. I don't see any difference at all. And in fact, I hear more and more harrowing stories of where people have overheard. I've actually had a couple of nurses tell me as well, and an ICU nurse in Australia contacted me, and they tell me it's being used, it's happening, they're doing it. I think actually the very fact of taking away a patient's nutrition and hydration is going to kill them very quickly. And I just would like to add here, regardless of whether we're talking Liverpool Care Pathway or whether we're talking just using midazolam, it was a Supreme Court in America in 2018 who stated that prisoners on death row could not receive midazolam because it was akin to waterboarding and it was prolonged torture. So Pfizer stated, no, you couldn't use midazolam, but they're using it on your loved ones. So whether you are thinking that you're doing Liverpool Care Pathway or not, you really are one stupid bint as a nurse if you think that you are above the law and that you can get away with it because you're signing all these documents.
Yeah, or a boy bint, because sometimes nurses are men, obviously. So
well, bint for me is male or female. For where I come from, it means somebody who doesn't think and they're just going along with it, but they have the arrogance to think they are above it. So let me put it probably then in a more simple terms. I get a bit irate with this because what we're actually discussing here tonight, we've got Tony sitting here, we've got Linda sitting here, we've got Dr. Cartland sitting here, who I have so much respect for because he not only witnessed it, and then he came out and told me some very harrowing things, a man with 4 young children, and they've come after him in the most heinous way. And what we're talking about here, sitting here on a Friday night on Unity News Network, can you believe that we're actually discussing premeditated murder? Let's not call it Liverpool Care Pathway. Let's not call it end of life care. Let's call it exactly what it is. It's premeditated. That's what it is. Somebody's writing it down and somebody's doing it. Somebody's pulling the trigger. It's premeditated because it's hastening a death.
But we know who those somebodies are, don't we? So it shouldn't, in theory, be difficult to get.
No, they signed it. They've signed it. That's why when they're all coming out on Twitter now, and which they are, they come out and they call me bitch. They call me all sorts. I don't care. You can call me what you like. I haven't killed anybody, and I haven't signed for it. So, ultimately, the ignorance and the arrogance of these so-called angels, I'd like to call them paid assassins, is that you have been used as the fall guys, just like we saw in another time in history where you all got butthurt over it because I pulled it to your attention in Trafalgar Square, and Jackie always corrected me on that. And there was a time in history when they did exactly the same. 8 tons of evidence, 900 pages. They used experimental vaccines and treatments. They starved the patients. They dehydrated the patients. They gave them a concoction of drugs, and they shoved them outside to kill them with exposure. And they were the nurses. And it was called the medical trials at Nuremberg. And these were civilized people. People keep going, well, that was a different time. They were very civilized. We didn't have LGBTQ. We didn't have people running around identifying as a man or woman or whatever else you want to identify. It was very different then. It was very proper and civilized. Yet they did heinous things and they stood trial. So why do you think?
I just wrote in my article today, the one that Iconic have published, that and about the media being complicit. Towards the end of the article, the second last paragraph, I was writing about how the people in Germany, in Nazi Germany, in church, they sang louder so they couldn't hear the cries and screams of the people being carted away. To me, that is a very good analogy for the media now, who are actually closing their ears and eyes to what we're telling them. They are the ones who are just sitting there singing louder, louder and louder so they can't hear the dreadful atrocities that are going on under their noses.
But we know that 78% of the advertising budget in mainstream media comes from pharma. So really they're just all wings on the same bird.
That reminds me, I must say, back in early 21, just after the jabs had been rolled out, I had people coming to me immediately saying my mum had the jab and she died that day. My friend Dave Harding, his ex-wife, died in his arms in the kitchen hours after she'd had the jab. I can name 100 people who came to me at that time, very, very early on. There's now 1,000. The guy who came to me because I think I actually approached him. His wife had the jabs and gone blind. She was 34 years old with 2 young kids. Numerous accounts of this. And I went to the papers. There was one editor in particular I went to. He's now left the paper. And I said, I gave him some examples of these stories. He actually put in writing, and I've still got the email, and he said, basically, we can't run these stories at this point in time because it will jeopardize the vaccine rollout. And I just thought,
our controllers say we can't.
He's put that in writing.
Well, they're just, it's pharma pay the advertising budget. They decide who get the top jobs. They decide what gets published in the medical magazines. And even if one can refute what is being published, if you speak out against it and you're doing trials, you lose your funding, you lose your job, you lose your reputation. And several hundred doctors, including nurses as well, have lost their lives. Before COVID, the biggest money spinner was cancer. Yeah. Over $600 billion in profit every year from oncology drugs alone. And, we're talking about it as though it's something new. And I'm sure Dr. Cartland would agree. I hope he does. One of the biggest cons ever is the statins con, putting patients onto statin drugs. And we know that if a patient is put on, it's one of the drugs that you can, and I will say this, you can throw it in the bin right now. You don't even have to wean off it. Throw that poison away. We know that if you take statin drugs, it's going to destroy your CoQ10 in your liver. Your brain needs that.
Yeah,
from a
personal point of view, my dad was on statins, and I've when I was going through all his meds, when I got him out of the care home, I said to his GP, he's on statins. Does he need to be on them? You know, what are they for? I'd read up on it. It's kind of half and half. They're good for you. They're bad for you. If you take someone off them, they're going to die, blah, blah, blah. So I said to my dad's GP, what shall I do? Keep him on them or take him off? And she said, well, it's up to you, really. And I was like, well, no, you're the doctor. You're the GP.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm asking, and she said, well, it's up to you. And I'm like, but I don't know. I'm kind of half and half, 50-50 from what I've read and researched. I'm scared. You know, if I take my dad off, if I take him off them and he dies, is that my fault? And she was like, oh, well, you've got to choose, really. I can't really say. And I was like, that is bizarre. David, what do you think of that?
I mean, the only time I would use statins now, you know, I've had to unlearn a lot of things from medical school these last few months. Actually, one of the things is the statin con, and I agree with what Kate says in that respect, and there's lots of medics that are speaking out to that effect, that there's more to it than meets the eye. You know, when you think about how GP surgeries are paid, you know, if you've got a cholesterol of 10 with a high LDL and a high triglycerides, you know, there's an argument for a small amount of time being on the statin to get it down to a reasonable level, so it's not clogging the arteries, as it were, stimulating arteriosclerosis. However, you've got to remember GP surgeries are paid by what's called QoF points. They get a small amount of money for each patient that's registered, but then they also get the vast majority of their income from what we call QoF points. And the QoF points are all about hitting targets. And to use the statin one, I think it's somewhere around 5 that you get paid. So if you've got a hypercholesterolemia coded patient, you will get paid for getting their cholesterol down to less than 5 or 4, something like that. And that's the only time that the cash will come into the surgery. So that's, you've got to put everything like that into context. Blood pressure is the same. You know, the quicker you can get your blood pressure patient down to 140/90 or less in certain comorbidities, then they get the paycheck at the end of the month. You know, and normally, I mean, guidance for diabetes, guidance for hypertension, there is guidance in place that you should give 6 months of intense lifestyle advice. They just don't do that anymore. They skip that step and go straight to the pharma, straight to the drugs, combinations thereof. So, and that's why, because at the end of it, yes, you want to get the patient's blood pressure down, but ultimately there's a financial benefit for that as well in terms of the QoF points.
It's funny you should mention that, David. I haven't told you about this, but I'm going for a cataract operation, and they said my blood pressure was like massively high. So then I had to go to my GP who took it and said it was. Then they said I had to go on some medications. I've been talking to Kate about it. And I thought, I'm going to kind of compromise. I'm going to go on the medication for a month and make some little lifestyle changes, what have you. It made no difference at all. The medication made no difference. I don't know what damage it's done to me, but it didn't improve the blood pressure. And my blood pressure is still high-ish. Can
I add something? Because I think it's really important that we also give people positive messages here.
Yeah, absolutely.
What people are told is that cholesterol, the low density cholesterol, is the bad guy. Your low density cholesterol is found around the edges of your blood vessels. When you've got holes in your blood vessels, it goes to the site to plug up the holes. It's like saying that every time there's a burglary and you see a cop car, the cop car's the cause of the burglary. No, it used to go there to investigate. Mm-hmm. So your cholesterol plugs up those holes. You need cholesterol. 70% of your brain cells, the membrane, is made of that fat, that cholesterol. You need cholesterol for your sex hormones. If you haven't got enough cholesterol, you lose all the tone in your muscles. That's all the muscles in your body, your heart muscles. It causes dementia. Now, what is responsible for atherosclerosis? It isn't cholesterol. It is sugar. Excess glucose in your blood will bind to protein and start to clog up your arteries. So it's not the fat on your toast. It's the toast underneath it. It's your carbs, your processed carbs. And this is where the entire system is make you sick, keep you sick, treat you, kill you, dispose of you, and charge you for the luxury because your body is your commodity. If you want dietary advice, you email me, naturalnurse@mail.com. And if I need a doctor for something else once I've seen you, I'll be passing you on to Dr. Dave Cartland.
Excellent. That's very good advice. And I know that you have got a lot of knowledge on this. on a personal level, because you have actually cured yourself of cancer as well, haven't you? So,
well, I treated myself. I'm 11 years post-aggressive lobular invasive grade 3 breast cancer with a high 78% pleomorphic. 3 independent peer-reviewed studies said I had a 20% chance of surviving 2 years and 0 surviving 5. I had the support of my consultant and my GP, and I had surgery. I declined chemo, radio, tamoxifen, and Zoladex. My brother-in-law, who part owns the hospital in Tehran, is the country's top urologist. The oncology team there said I'd be dead in 18 months, and to force me to do it. I did the full Gerson therapy, which is diet, which is supplements, which is coffee enemas. I did mistletoe injections. I did high dose vitamin C, and I did vitamin B17 protocols. I did that all for 2 years. I still pretty much live that way. Yeah, I fall off the wagon sometimes, but I pretty much live that way. And I'm alive and well and cancer-free 11 years on. Now, it doesn't matter what anyone says, all these little troll surgeons that come out on Twitter and say she's alive because she did surgery. Well, if that's the point, why was I then told I had to take all of those other drugs and do chemo? So they're talking out their behinds because and you know, most of these doctors that come and tell me what to do, they're fat. Yeah. Now, isn't obesity, it exponentially increases the risk of every disease, and also every single fat cell you have exponentially increases your estrogen level. That's a growth promoter. So you know, doctors, as Dr. Cartland said, we need to screw it all up and throw it in the bin, because this is the Rockefeller petroleum-based drug industry, and we need a whole new system where people are taught to avoid and reverse disease naturally. Because most of, you know, apart from infection and getting ran over by a bus, all of the rest of medicine is degenerative disease, and they rely on you poisoning yourself to get to that point.
Yeah, I'm trying to tie everything together tonight to include Linda and Tony. So we're talking about the lockdown files and what's missing from what we've seen so far. And a lot of what is missing is the whole euthanasia thing and the whole neglecting care homes, and also the jabs, you know. So I just want to ask Tony, listening to Kate there, is there anything that springs to mind that you'd like to talk about?
No, just I agree with it all. I don't take any medication either. I'm 54 now, 55 in April. I had a stroke just, as I said, 6 weeks after losing my mum. I thought I was dying. I was in the kitchen here, and as far as I was concerned, I was dying. It was the worst experience of my life. Now, during the stroke I had it, my arm was literally, I was looking at my arm on the work surface. It wasn't attached to me as far as I could see. Obviously it was, but in my vision it wasn't. Yeah. Midway through my stroke, I could feel myself dying. I just knew I was dying. It was the worst experience of my life. And as I got to that point, I held my hand, because it was obviously it was doing nothing. And my mum stood by me. I just lost my mum 6 weeks previous. And it was the most beautiful feeling. I knew she was there. I knew she'd passed away. But as far as I was concerned, at that moment in time, I was with her, and it was beautiful. And I said, "Mum, you with me?" And she said, "Anthony, I love you." 3 times she said it, and my arm became super strong. I couldn't control my right arm. It wrapped itself around me, and I couldn't push it off me. It was frightening. And 3 times it did that. And all of a sudden, she disappeared. My mum went, and my son walked in, and he'd done his training with he did all his training for health, and he tested me for the doctor at the same time. The doctor said, "Can you do this? Can you do that to your dad?" My what do you call it? The heart rate was sky high. Long story short, again, after all the tests I had were very good to me, and this was in the height of COVID. They found I had a hole in my heart, a PFO. Yeah. Which you're born with that, but most people, the hole closes. Am I right with that? So what it was, it's quite a large hole. I had it operated on a year later. They put me on statins, as you mentioned statins earlier, and I'd never felt so poorly in my life on the statins. No. I came straight off them because I said, not taking them anymore. After I was at Leeds General Infirmary to close the hole, the consultant, the cardiologist said to me, no statins whatsoever. He said, just keep an aspirin once in the morning for the rest of your life now. Now I take an aspirin, and that is all I take. 54, no, nothing. Touch wood, nothing. Now, when they did a brain scan to see what had happened after I'd had that episode, the consultant said to me, the damage on your brain, we are amazed you are functioning the way you are. What does that tell us?
Okay, well, this is really interesting because we're going into a sort of spiritual thing now,
Yes.
which I think is really, really important. I don't know what anyone else's beliefs. I know Kate's a Christian. I don't know anyone else.
I am quite spiritual. My mum's very spiritual. Sorry. My mum's really spiritual. And when I told the consultant this in his office, he actually said to me, he said, it does look as though something else has happened to you.
Yes.
Other than a stroke.
Some kind of divine intervention,
Yes.
or like you say,
I think I was definitely dying.
And I know, Kate, you're very practical, but I know you're a Christian. Linda, I don't know your views on spiritual stuff. What do you think of Tony's story there? Have you had any experience?
Yeah, no, I totally adhere to what Tony says. I would be very spiritual. I've certainly sensed my mum around since she's gone. In fact, she helped me find my house that I have now. So yeah. So she was very much involved in that. Totally. Just going back to what Kate was talking about there. Sorry to change the subject again slightly, but I'm very interested. I'm very much into natural ways of life. I don't believe in medication. I don't take anything at all. Occasional paracetamol if my arthritis really gets at me, but absolutely nothing. I take a lot of vitamins, supplements, and I think it's important that you exercise and just keep as fit as possible. And I'm 70 this year, and absolutely don't feel it at all. So, and I've got a few grandchildren, I've got a few great grandchildren, but we won't go into that too much.
No, you should be proud. I love being a granny. It's fantastic. It's the best thing ever. And the fact that we've been allowed to live this long.
It's interesting. In the Merck Medical Manual, I believe it was the 5th edition, they advocated the use of coffee enemas, and they were used in the First World War when they had no opioids then. So they used them, and they would cause pain relief. And I used these after surgery, and it was fantastic, and I still do them today because there's nothing that will cleanse the liver, and yet these are not offered now. And Linda talks about paracetamol, and I know Dave will back this. Paracetamol, which is sold in the supermarkets, and there was a time when ibuprofen, Nurofen, would be sold at cinema complexes next to the sweets. And I, for one, campaigned to get it removed from there and from Wilko's, because when children eat those, they're enteric coated, they're covered in sugar. Isn't that right, Dave? So they eat lots of them, and you don't realize they've done it until they have this massive, vomit of blood. But paracetamol is extremely dangerous. You only need to take 8 in one time, depending on your liver, the state of your liver, and you're going to have the antidote to that if you overdose on it, Parvalex, within 72 hours. That's what you would be given in A&E. Now, most of these patients will take this for days and days and days. They're taking other drugs. Everything filters through the liver. If your liver is not functioning properly, your liver is the only organ known to regenerate, and you don't know you've got problems with your blood results till you get down to the last third. What your liver will do is package toxins up and ship them back out into your blood. So what happens is these patients present in the emergency room. They might be elderly with a whole load of comorbidities. They're on a whole bag full of drugs. Isn't that right, Dr. Carlton? They'll come in with like a carrier bag of prescription medication. And then you'll have like your SHOs, your senior house officers on. And they'll just get put through the system. But actually what gets missed is the fact that in the top 3 causes of death in the UK is heart disease, cancer, and prescription medication, including paracetamol. It's a very dangerous drug that's very underestimated.
Yeah, I tend to go try more of the natural anti-inflammatories. So things like turmeric, ginger, I would do a lot of juicing with those type of things, and I find that they keep everything at bay. You know, there's lots of natural.
You look great, Linda. You look great. You don't look 70.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah. So I feel great. I do feel great, you know, and, you know, I'm a former yoga teacher, so I try and stay as relaxed and chilled as I can.
Linda, I know your age. You're 68 or something. My mum was killed in a hospice, age 68. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
She's as young and beautiful looking as you, healthy, fine. She was killed. But the weird thing was, I didn't realize that until I had started researching this whole midazolam stuff. And it was only in June 2021 when I was doing an interview on my birthday with Gareth Icke from Iconic that it struck me, you know, that had happened to my mum as well, you know. And I was talking about it, and it was, when I look back now, and this is something that everyone that's in my WhatsApp support group that I set up, that you're a member of, whose loved ones have suffered this terrible, terrible fate, the overriding feeling is guilt. And it's like, why didn't I do this? I could have done that, you know. And you look back and you remember things and you think, oh my God, you know, I should have done that. I'm an idiot. And you've got that. And that is something that prevents you from properly grieving. You can never properly grieve until you get justice. But also you feel like an idiot, which is a horrible thing. And that's why I set up the group, to bring all these people together, because number one, they felt like idiots. And number two, they felt alone. We solved that. There's now I think 66 people in our little group. They know they're not alone. There's a lot of people outside the group that just didn't want to be in the group for whatever reasons. But this horrible feeling of guilt, I don't know, Tony, did you experience that you think, oh my God, I should have done this, should have done that? I know you're doing your absolute utmost and your best now and doing really well.
Even at the time, I've got no guilt of that whatsoever, Jackie, because as you know, I'm youngest of 5, and I couldn't have done any more than I actually did. So I think I'm lucky not to have that guilt. The only thing I do look back on now, I didn't kick that door down and get them about that care home sooner.
Yeah, well, that's amazing, because you are probably the only person in the group, and that's what having you in the group is amazing, because you can say to these people, like I was saying, you don't have to feel guilty. You haven't done anything wrong. You know, you did your best at the time. And I'm talking to myself when I'm saying this as well. When I sat there with my mum dying and just not having a clue what was going on, this was in 2009. Looking back now, I did feel guilty. But now, talking to people like you, I know, when we all come together and people like you say, you don't have to feel guilty, you did your best. That's really...
When I got my mum into the hospital, there was a debate and the ambulance came and took her to hospital. The nurse who was looking after my mum in A&E, I knew her. She was a friend of mine, thankfully. Now, they called me and said, Tony, come in. Now, again, a long story short, that was the first time I'd seen my mum since the lockdown was done, 2.5, 3 months properly, and I gave her the biggest hug ever. Now, she said to me, Tony, you can come up to the ward, but you can't come in. So we get to the ward, and I couldn't go in. She said, the reason why you can't come in, Tony, is because we're treating your mum. And I said, thank you for that. I will accept that. Treat her. So, but can you wait there for me? Because I want to ask you something when I come back out. So she comes back out 5-10 minutes later. And she said, Tony, I need to ask you a question. I said, ask me anything you want. She said, Tony, who put your mum on end of life? Because we are treating her. She isn't end of life. So there's the big one for you, hence why the legal action again is going forwards. The nurse came forward. They were treating her. They put my mum onto the saline drip. They put her on antibiotics. Yet in the care home in the morning hours before, I've been told this, in the hospital, we were invited to go in when we didn't even know she was ill, but to go in and watch her die. So if I hadn't got my mum, being the person that I am towards my mum, I got her out that care home. The care home manager is shouting his head and saying, it's COVID, it's COVID, it's COVID. Yet on the medical record, there's no mention of COVID.
No. So can I just say, David, this was May, wasn't it, 2020, when Antonia, your lovely mother, died. What was happening in your life, David, in May 2020?
Oh God, that's a long time ago. I've lost track of what day it is.
Most of it is not. I know. I get 2020 and 2021 mixed up now. It's like, was it that year? Was it that year?
Yes.
But for people like Tony, he knows. The people in my group, they not only know what year it was, they know what month it was, they know what day it was, they know what time it was. Like when Tony talks, when Linda talks, they say it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon on this date on this day.
You don't lose it here.
Yeah,
you don't lose it. You don't.
And I have that as well when I talk about what happened to my dad, which is a separate story. But so David, sorry, I wasn't disparaging you there, saying you don't remember dates and times. But around that time, May 2020, I kind of remember I definitely remember what I was doing. How was your life at that point in time, and what was going on?
Was that right at the beginning of the pandemic, just to clarify?
Yeah.
About 2 months in. So yeah, I was in the Midlands, and I've since moved down to Cornwall for what was supposed to be a work-life balance thing, but it's not worked out that way. But that story aside, very quiet. I always remember the first day of the pandemic, and we got an email essentially saying, you know, we're going to be working from home. And because I had asthma, I got to stay.
But did you actually believe at that point there was a killer virus coming to get us all? Yeah.
Yeah, I watched the same TV as everyone else. You know, you're watching people collapsing like Derek Trotter in the bar, you know, in Italy, Wuhan, etc., etc. So there was a fear of God put into doctors as well as everyone else. We thought we were fighting the bubonic plague, if you listen to the BBC. And so, you know, I remember the first thing being, you're not going to be allowed into work. Work's going to change quickly into a telephone-based system. And they were going to send a laptop out, etc. And I remember being told, because you've got asthma, you can't come anywhere near the building. You can't see anyone. PPE wasn't even a thing then, albeit the PPE that subsequently came was just useless rags. But yeah, I remember signing a waiver to say, you know, if I go into work in Kidderminster, which is where I lived then, if I died of COVID, then it's not on Kidderminster's head. So I signed a waiver. But as I went into the building, all the partners and senior doctors went out the other way. Claiming things like historic asthma as a child, etc. So I've gone on to the front line. And anyway, to cut a long story short, very quiet. It's GP's a busy job. You know, you're seeing 40 plus patients a day. You don't really stop to break because you're doing home visits in your lunch break, and you run ragged. And that's been the whole 15 years of my career.
So can I ask you, do you think that because, you know, you were so busy and so caught up in your life and your family life, and you were watching the TV, that you actually believed that there was a killer virus on the loose? Even as a doctor, you believe that, yeah?
Yeah, and I do believe there's a deliberateness in that, running doctors ragged, so they're exhausted, they're running low on empathy. Yeah. They certainly haven't got time after 12 hours of being run ragged to go and read the Lancet or the BMJ, for example. So, you know, you're catching sound bites from BBC or on radio when you get heading into work. And even to this day, I keep getting people quoting the BBC as their source of medical information. And, you know, we haven't all got the time that you've got, Dave, to keep up to date with evidence-based medicine. A very, very small percentage of me is empathetic to them, only because I know what it's like to see 60 patients in a day and need a urinary catheter on the go. And it's just not a nice, and I do feel sorry in that respect. But unfortunately, we're dealing with a worldwide pandemic, in inverted commas, and that's no excuse. You have to keep up to date. It's your professional it's your professional duty to do that. It's no excuse. But yeah, very quiet back in the day, to the point where I was doing absolutely nothing. I was twiddling my thumbs. I wasn't thinking about doing.
So when did you start to question what was going on?
Well, yeah, the first 6 months, it was literally sitting and watching and seeing, you know, we were being told. I remember looking back now that, you know, all the treatment, well, there wasn't any treatment. It was essentially who's breathless and who's not. If you get somebody that's done a test and they're COVID positive, just assess if they're breathless, because you weren't seeing them, assessing them, doing their oximetry at the time.
So can I ask you, were you aware of the protocols that were put in place at the time, NG 163?
No, not at all. And it was a very quiet time, not only about lack of treatment guidance, what you tell these folk, unless they're breathless, you send them into hospital. But in terms of the guidance, you weren't getting anything from above about anything. It was a very quiet time. You'd get sort of a few logistical emails come through, but nothing else. So you were kind of blind leading the blind, really. There was nothing coming out of that.
How do you feel about that, looking back on it now?
Yeah, there was just no guidance. I mean, you've got to take into context that, it was new ground for everyone. We didn't know what was playing out in front of us. There's a lot of fear factor, military grade startups at work. But at the same time, there wasn't any guidance from until late in the day from the powers that be that were presenting their next slide, please, every day. That came very late in the day. We were literally getting patients to count back from 30 after a deep breath. And if they couldn't make it, then you'd send them into ITU, never to return.
What?
That was all we were doing. That was it. We do.
Did you just say that?
No, you do something, Katie. What you do is a Roth score. That was one of the only bits of guidance I ever had. So if somebody said I've got COVID-19, they'd got a cough and they were a bit breathless and wheezy, you'd get them to breathe in, breathe out, and then count as quickly as they can to 30. And if you could get to 30 or a decent way along, then
hang on a sec.
Yeah, I'm
not breathless. I'm not breathless. I'm relatively fit. I walk between 4 and 8 miles a day with my 2 Chihuahua rats, and I do weights at least 3 times a week. Hold on a minute. Could you just get me to do that, Dave? Talk me through it. I'm your patient. Let's go.
Okay, I'm trying to dust off old information. This is 2.5 years ago at the peak of the pandemic. So you get you breathe in, you breathe in.
Here we are.
You breathe out to full expiration. And then when you're in full expiration, you count backwards or forwards to 30.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16.
And then when you take a breath, that's when you take the point off. So if you have to take a breath in.
I've taken 2 breaths already.
I know you did. So that's what I'm saying.
People were put on ventilators based on this. These are supposed to be, not Dave, of course. These are supposed to be the country's finest, most educated, most intelligent people who let idiots tell them what to do. All of their knowledge went out of their heads and their discernment followed it right out the door with it. Yeah. And they followed a guideline that even said on the bottom of it, don't consider it yourself with the fact that the patient is breathless when you prescribe 2 drugs that are going to suppress their central nervous system, i.e. the respiratory center in their brain is going to be squashed even more. Don't concern yourself with the fact that they're already breathless. I mean, Dave, I can't, may I call you Dave, not Dr. Cartland? I can't get my head around this because... No,
call him mate.
I prefer Dr. McCarthy.
No, it doesn't make sense. A bit like getting a vaccine that produces spike protein. It just conceptually, it's not right, is it? I mean, these drugs, you've got to remember, are used in a very narrow window of clinical indication, i.e. these are end of life. When I mean end of life, like the last hours, and they're only used within a very narrow window of indication, like I say. So, for example, midazolam at very low doses for PRN, for example, for anxiolysis, or hyoscine for respiratory secretions in the moments of death. If there's any distress, I don't think anyone would argue that, if somebody's agitated because they're in renal failure and they're uremic, and they're starting to get twitchy, that you use a little bit of midazolam in that situation. But it was prescribed in advance and it was prematurely used in a lot of the situations I've heard about in my clinical practice. It is for end of
hyoscine, Dave. Tell the hyoscine, it dries up your secretions in your throat. So when you hear that patient is at the last stages of their life, they can no longer swallow. As they exhale, you hear the rattle of the saliva. One of the reasons that they give the hyoscine is because the relatives and the nurses don't like to hear that death rattle.
I was about to say, it's more for relatives. That's given for relatives more than anything.
Is that the same as glycopyrronium bromide that they gave to my dad?
Yeah, it's the same. There's various.
People don't want to hear them choking to death.
Yeah.
The National Harm Service, ladies and gentlemen, where you all check in but you don't check out. The scare homes and the hospitals, brought to you by the Angels of Death.
Exactly. And they're a little bit chubby as well, but we're not going to go into that.
Did you just get fattest there, Jackie?
Sorry, what? No, I was just thinking something. Totally random. Tony, your film Mother, which I think is the most amazing film, and I remember from the last time when you came on the show, it was 14 minutes long, but we had sound issues. Gold Eagle, listen here. Would everyone be in? Tony, do you think it's appropriate to show that film now?
I don't mind at all.
Okay, because I know you made that film before you discovered what had actually happened to your mother.
Yeah.
So, so you're okay with that.
So
Gold Eagle,
forward, yeah.
I'm just telling Gold Eagle, who's the producer, that it's on your Facebook. It's a pinned post, isn't it? Is the film a pinned post? Yeah. So that'd be quite an easy way to find it. Just so
There's also the one that I've got with Fadi, my lawyer, which is quite interesting. That they did that. Brand YouTube did that as well. Yeah.
But I also want to get on to, you've been filming last week with sorry, I keep saying link because of the link.
Just on Tuesday.
Yeah, with Gareth and
Dominique.
So, my producer Gold Eagle is saying, can you send a link? I don't have, he doesn't have Facebook. Where else is it?
Is it on Twitter? It's on Twitter.
Is it on Twitter?
It's on my Twitter page, yeah.
And you're Tony Stoll. That should be quite easy. He's looking now.
Where it is, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just thinking so we can have a break and go to the toilet and stuff. But no, it's such a beautiful film. But I was asking about it because it was prior to.
Well, it's gone over. It's over 500,000 views now.
I know.
540,000 views. I think it's got now.
Yeah. It's such a lovely film. Who made that film with you?
It was just clippings of interviews, Channel 5, BBC, all of them. And Brad YouTube put it all together for me. We did it together.
Oh, okay, no.
It was a piece and made it into one.
Have you seen the film, Kate?
Tony's film? No, not yet.
Okay, it's good. Gold Eagle's on it now. I can see him like beavering away in the background there. But no, it's a really beautiful film, and there's no way you can watch it without shedding a tear. And we should shed tears because that's what's happening. The terrible things that are happening. So we're just looking for that now. But in the meantime,
isn't it interesting? My mother is nearly 80 and she has private healthcare in Australia, private healthcare. So she has everything. It's like the gold standard one. Every time I speak to her, she only has to fart the wrong way. And she's having blood tests, scans, x-rays, you name it, she gets the lot. Now, I often say to her, make sure you keep paying it. Because I wonder if she didn't have that and she was on the bog standard care like all the rest of the Aussies out there, she'd also be wearing her autumn wardrobe of the black zip-up bag with the double tag.
You're hilarious. That reminds me, as I said, I'm having a cataract operation on the 25th of March. And because the NHS messed up with a lot of my paperwork and stuff, they put me in a private hospital, basically. So I'm going to have cataract operations. And I've been there for a couple of appointments. And they're so nice and they're so polite and just absolutely lovely. It's a different experience altogether.
It is. My only luxury to myself is Bupa. I don't even have a boyfriend and go out. I just have my Bupa.
Well, I had a Bupa unit shut down. They were that bad. I had it closed down by the CQC and all the staff sacked.
I used the London clinic where the Royals go in London.
Yeah, they were the worst care home. I was invited to the headquarters in Chelsea Harbour. I had it closed down. They were that bad, and 6 carers suspended. It was the worst care home ever.
Tony, can I?
Care home, but hopefully, that I'm just talking about London clinic
in general because it's the
Isn't it sad? I think we talk about all this and we talk about our loved ones going in private care homes or care. Well, actually, they're all private. They're all privately owned. 93% of the care homes in the United Kingdom are owned by 2 companies. One of them is a rich Arab billionaire, and their accounts are in the Cayman Islands. And they are now buying up more and more care homes. But I think what's interesting, and I know Dave will probably second this as well, is you don't see many Asians in the care homes. And you don't see many Middle Eastern patients because they actually do, in their culture, take care of their own. And I think that this is where we need to start thinking, do we, obviously, if a patient has got severe dementia and they're a danger to themselves and everyone else, that's very difficult. But I think generally what we see is a lot of parents are placed in care. I've seen it, and I know Dave would have seen this as well. I've seen it where patients would just arrive at the A&E department, and when you would call the relatives, they would be gone on holiday. People didn't want their elderly. It got in the way. was like having a pet that you had to put in the cat and dog home when you go on a holiday. It was a big problem. And also, come Christmas, these patients don't see people from one week to the next. And then the relatives will pitch up on a Sunday for half an hour and then they go. But I'm telling you, the minute those people die, those relatives are there like rats out of aqueducts to see how much is in the patient account.
Well,
That's why
the system placed me on a gagging order, because I was there every day. They didn't want me to be there. They don't want families.
Yeah, you're a minority, Tony. I wish you were my son, but you're a bit,
They don't want families to be there. They do not want families to be there. Hence why they put me on a gagging order, because they knew I had every care home. Carer suspended. Bupa shut down. The unit was closed down. I was seeing everything what was going on. I don't trust any care home, because it's all.
No, I have to say I'm of the same opinion. Unfortunately,
I don't trust any of them.
You get good nurses and good carers. You do, and we mustn't throw them out.
You get good nurses in the hospital. You also get bad nurses in the hospital as well. I've seen bad nurses in hospitals. Because at the end of the day, I don't care what job anybody does, you're still a human being at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I don't trust any human being, full stop. I don't care what qualifications they try and throw at me. Doesn't prove anything to me that. It's whether you've got a big enough heart and show love and respect. I don't care what qualifications come into it.
Yeah,
so
I think we're all in agreement on that. Absolutely. In fact, something I was thinking about recently, I was trying to work out, why a lot of us knew all about this from the start, why some people are critical thinkers and why some people aren't. And I kind of boiled it down very quickly in the way that I do, in that a lot of people I know who've not been to university, who've not gone to get master's degrees in this or that, they're not doctors, they're not lawyers, they seem to be better critical thinkers than people who have gone on to do those, get those degrees and master's degrees and whatever. So I don't know if there's anything in it. It's just one of my little weird.
Yeah, I can jump in that. My daughter's just got her master's.
Yeah.
She thinks on the same level as me. So that throws that right out the window for me, with respect.
Yeah.
Because I believe it comes from your upbringing.
Yeah.
When I'm youngest of 5, I can only go by my siblings and my family. Yeah. I would never point my finger at anybody else. That would be so wrong of me.
Yeah.
But when I went off to Spain on a holiday, I would phone my mum. I would know exactly what she was doing from hour to hour. When my plane flew off, I said goodbye to my mum. I tried phoning her every day. The phone was never answered. I thought, God, what's happened to her? Nobody informed me. So my holiday was ruined, if you like.
Yeah.
I got home. My mum had been placed into a care home behind my back by my siblings.
Ooh.
Yes. So hence why I don't get on with them, and I never will ever again.
Yeah.
Because, and this is why I go back regarding families, and what you said earlier, they put them in care, they don't see them anymore. I believe that is a massive problem.
But Tony, this is something that has been going on over the last 3 years, the dividing families, I've been through it myself as well with my dad when he died, and the step family, and still going through it now. And this is something that I've seen, thousands.
This has just made it worse. This has made it worse.
Yeah. And it's separated families. Everything that's gone on is separated families, and that's
they want to cause a massive divide, don't they? An even bigger divide.
Yeah.
They couldn't do that with me. My mum's my mum regardless. I'm not going to listen to somebody else when I've got my mum there. I was brought up by her, and we were brought up beautifully. So why would I listen to somebody else over my mum? Absolutely no chance.
Yeah.
So
Linda, can I just ask, Linda, did you have any issues like that with family or?
Not really, no. There's only my sister and I, and obviously my stepfather. I think the lockdowns created so much, huge troubles. I mean, they wouldn't let us anywhere near the care home for days and weeks on end. Then we got to this stupid situation where, you can come and look at her through a window. And of course, they don't understand. And she'd be standing there as frail as anything and saying, come in. And, they didn't understand. And take that, she used to say to me, take that stupid mask off, she'd say.
It's reminded me of my dad now, you know.
Yeah.
He'd say, I was out the window and he was like, come in. And I'm like, no, Dad, they're not letting me come in.
Yeah.
And he was saying, why not? He was not saying why not because he was demented or because he had vascular dementia. He's a normal person saying, why not? I was saying, why not as well, you know. It's not because he was, you know, had dementia that he was questioning it. It's because he was a normal human being and we were all questioning it.
Yeah.
And that's why I got him out there.
Yeah. During the, I think it was the second unlawful lockup, there was a lady who I've known for several years prior to this, a very well-known lady. I'm not going to say her name on here. But she'd had a back injury and she'd put her father, who was in his 90s, in a care home for respite. I knew this lady very well, and she contacted me one evening in a frantic state. She was due to get her father out the next day. He had a mobile phone, and the care home said, you can't have him now. He's got COVID. And they took his phone off him, and they took the charger off him. Now, we didn't find out about the charger until the next day. So with the help of David Clues, who put it out there and then on air, lots of people got down there, and I sent this lady and her friend with 2 mobile phones to record, to go down there, and we phoned the police. And the police officer arrived, and I spoke to him over the phone, and I said that I would hold him personally accountable and his personal wealth, that we would come after him if anything should happen to this gentleman, and it could be proven beyond all reasonable doubt that it was as a consequence of what happened in there. So this police officer then said, well, look, I'm going to go in. So he went in because clearly he's got some invisible electric force that stops the virus from getting at him and sticking to his stab vest. Maybe it was his stab vest, but the daughter couldn't go in. So when they went in, that was when they discovered that he went in, that this gentleman not only didn't have his mobile phone, the staff had taken it and the charger. Why? Was that detrimental to his health and well-being? Now, eventually what happened, they stayed there. The next morning, with the help of a lawyer, that man was unceremoniously dumped out the door at 7 a.m. So, you know, this is what goes on. I also spoke to another lady who, I think she was a phlebotomist. She went to the care home. Her father was in the room. She phoned me in a terrible state. This is right at the beginning when I was one of the first that was out the box. And it was on the ground floor and it was very warm. Do you remember that first year of 2020, May, June? It was very, very warm. She walked, they wouldn't let her in. So she walked around the back of the home. The window was open. There was her father, who was diabetic. I think he was type 1 diabetic, and he saw her, started begging for a drink. At that point, she's got the window pulled even more open. She's leaning right in. The care assistant came in and she went, get my father a drink. She gave him 2 drinks. He knocked both drinks back. The next thing, the nurse came, shut the window, shut the curtains. That was the last time that woman saw her father alive, and he died the next day. Now, whatever any of us think might have happened, that in itself, all of that behavior is to do something in a way to conceal. And we have to remember that the word palliative, the origins of the word palliative, do not mean end of life. They mean to hide. It means to hide and conceal. The origins are in Latin. So palliative, to hide and conceal. And we also have to remember all of these words, Hegelian dialect, they're all chosen.
I'm so glad that Kate is here explaining all this stuff that I know but can't put into such brilliant words. She's amazing. And she's absolutely right. So I'm still, Tony, I'm still looking, trying to get, have you got a link to your film, Mother? Because Gold Eagle, our producer, is trying to find it. We've got it on Facebook, but have you got an actual link that we could put up?
I haven't got a link. I've already got the actual.
Is it on YouTube?
Do you want me to send it to you now? Shall I send it to you?
No, send it to me now. Oh, no, it's all right. Gold Eagle says, I found it on brand new YouTube. Excellent. Do you know what? Shall we play the film and then come back and have a longer show afterwards? Are you all right? Are you all okay to hang around for a bit?
I
I
can watch-
have my Wi-Fi going off. It's on a timer, and I have a live news.
Yeah, I've only got till 9 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a live thing at 5. I've got to get up at 5 for a lot. I just did just to let everybody know, don't lose hope. I was on mainstream news in Greece last week on a current affairs program talking about what we're talking about now. And I'm also on a live show in Australia tomorrow, and TNT have just offered me a show as well of my own. So this is getting out there. It's interesting. I just got kicked off. Did you notice when I started to mention the words palliative comes to hide and conceal, and 93% of the function of our DNA is light and sound transmission and reception. All of this is it's all linked. But just to finish, in case I get cut off and go, what has happened in these care homes is not following COVID rules. This was people taking horrible rules into their own hands, like little Nazis. Terrible.
Absolutely. I think we're playing. If you can hang around. I think we're going to play Tony's film Mother, which is absolutely brilliant. If you can hang around, do. Talk to you soon.
How do you feel about CCTV cameras in care home bedrooms? Well, a campaign has been launched to change the law and allow relatives to keep an eye on their loved ones. Tony Stowell from Hull has shared this footage of his mum in a care home. Some of you might find this upsetting.
Just got to see my mum. Yeah, nobody here, curtain shut. 11:15, nobody about. No one-to-one, nobody. Mum left in bed, no one-to-one. Curtain shut. This isn't the care we said.
When lockdown prevented Tony Stowell from visiting his mum Antonia inside her care home, he would still go knock on her window and wave to her most days. Before his dad died, he promised him he'd look after her. But when he was told she had a chest infection, he had no way of knowing how ill she really was until he got a phone call from one of the staff.
Said your mum's been put on end of life. So you try to imagine, from my mum waving to me, to be told that my mum's been put on end of life.
Tony believes if she'd had CCTV in her room, he'd have realised earlier how unwell she was.
For me, having a camera in her room, yes, I believe I could have saved her life. And if not saved her life, given a chance.
He's now campaigning for Antonia's Law, which would give families the right to install a monitor in their relative's room at their own expense that they could then access with an app.
You had a string of problems. You seem to have a real run of bad luck when it came to your mum's care. Just tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, well, as you say, bad luck, but I'm going to have to rephrase that slightly. I don't think it's bad luck. I think it's just the care system. That's my opinion. I think I'm just the one that's coming out with it, as I am doing, and I will do.
At the last count, there were over 67,000 allegations of abuse in the care sector, a number that doubled in just 5 years. But while surveillance is now a fact of life, there are now 5.2 million cameras across the country, 1 for every 13 people. Extending it to the care sector has seen resistance.
Abuse, especially against vulnerable people in care homes, is abhorrent, and we're determined to stop it. Any kind of surveillance must consider the privacy and dignity of those it seeks to record.
There's lots of privacy issues and perhaps even issues on mental capacity as well. But those in the proposal are addressed by ensuring that the resident has the choice. So this won't be forced on anybody. It's a proposal whereby the resident has the choice to put that camera in their room, and the resident is in command, and the resident controls the footage. So in terms of privacy, no one is going to have this forced upon them.
It's perfectly reasonable what you're asking for. Yes. As an investigative journalist, I've looked into elder abuse. It is widespread, and there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't have CCTV, and you're not even asking taxpayers to fork out for it. You're saying individual families and residents should pay for their own CCTV if they want it.
Cameras are installed absolutely everywhere, in shops, speed cameras, you name it. We are living in a big brother society where you can't even sneeze without someone videoing it. So what is the problem of having cameras installed in a place that a lot of abuse happens? And as I said, this is nothing to do with the good carers. This is about the ones who give good carers a bad name.
It's given me nightmares, if I'm honest with you. Each one tripped my mum, in my opinion, terribly. The care she received, obviously not all carers. I'm not blaming carers at all. I'm not pointing at carers here. They do wonderful work. And it's a job that I think, and I know it doesn't stand high enough. They need rewarding for what they do, and maybe the system needs to change that.
Nearly half of care homes have no CCTV. Just 5% have it in both communal areas and bedrooms. And just a third of staff say they'd be comfortable with it due to concerns about their own privacy and that of those they're caring for.
But I think families should have a right, if they wish to do so, to place a CCTV in their relative's room.
Tony, as part of his campaign, has spoken to many carers, and actually quite a few have said actually they support that idea.
If you are doing your job properly as a carer and you have been trained properly, then why would you have a problem? It's added security for you. You know, if something were to go missing, if you know, anything were to happen.
Hey, don't take her away! Don't take her away!
I lost my mum last May in a care home to COVID-19, apparently. I used to go and see her every day at the window, wave to her. She'd wave me to go in and see her. Now, I was running the campaign before that, but this is the big reason why I wanted to get this out there, because obviously with lockdown, we couldn't get into the care homes, as no one else could either.
His mum was entitled to a one-to-one carer who should have been with her during that period. So the fact she was on her own is quite a big deal in that, let alone the fact that it was 11:15 on a Saturday morning and she was still in bed. She hadn't been washed, she hadn't been dressed.
How many other thousands upon thousands of people have gone through what I've gone through, but have been silenced and haven't had the strength or the, I don't want to call it, I don't know what it is I've had inside me. Yes, I adored my mum, and I really believe that, and no one's going to stop me, because if I would have had cameras in there, or allowed to have, I really do believe to this day, in the day till I die, I think I could have saved my mum's life. If not, she was laid there for a week, I think, passing away in that care home. What were they doing to her? Why weren't we called?
Many of us have obviously or have got relatives in care homes. I certainly have. This will strike a chord with many people out there. Many people, I'm sure, I know, have wanted CCTV in bedrooms, in care homes before. So this is surely going to be very much welcomed.
Tony's mum, Antonia, died last May 2020. I'm very sorry about that, Tony. You have been fighting to launch a vitally important campaign in her name. A number of well-known celebrities and politicians are backing you, as am I.
Hi, my name's Winston Ellis.
Hi everyone, it's Sarah McDermott here.
Hi everyone, Paul Manners here. Hey you beautiful people, it's Chico here.
Hi there, I'm Carrie Grant and I'm supporting Tony Stoll's Let's Have Cameras in Care Homes campaign.
Hello, Marlene here. Well, not Marlene, obviously. My name is Sue Holderness. Please support Tony Stoll.
Hi guys, Michelle Heaton here. I just wanted to say that I am backing Tony Stoll's campaign.
We need cameras in care homes. We must stop abuse of these vulnerable people.
It's a really important campaign, this one, because of people that are elderly, perhaps that have dementia or Alzheimer's. My own mum was in a care home for many years with Alzheimer's, so I think that's incredibly important. But also, let's not forget those who have learning disability among us, who also can find themselves at any age in a care home. It's not that difficult to do, and it's not that expensive to do. This should be standard practice.
My grandma was actually a victim of theft. There was someone in her care home who was stealing money from her.
My grandma was in a care home and I know she'd not have the best of times, and I think that if CCTV cameras were there, maybe her time would have been a lot better and more pleasurable.
It's a great campaign. It's something that needs to be done and looked into.
I think that it's so important. I really massively support Tony's campaign and will do everything I can to support him in any way.
This needs to be sorted and it's the right thing to do.
So please back him, follow him on Twitter, Instagram, and get behind the campaign. Good luck, Tony.
You are a great man and you're going to leave a legacy behind you that we will all benefit from, because no matter what age and stage you're at, one day this could be you. And if it's not you, it could be your parents or your grandparents or some relative that you love and adore.
It's led to this huge campaign by Antonia's son, Tony, and I asked him what his mum would make of that campaign.
Oh, no, I know my mum and how we were very similar. I know what my mum, she would want this to be everywhere. She was an angel, my mum, and I know she's protecting me now and guiding me. My mum wouldn't want anyone to be hurt. She would help anyone.
You've worked like a soldier, Tony, over the last year and a half. I have no doubt, without even knowing your mum, any mum would be proud of what their son has been working to do. You've managed to get this throughout Parliament.
His calls for a change in the law have gained cross-party backing in Parliament, and an early day motion has already been submitted, the first step in a long process.
I'm half Spanish, my mum's Spanish, brought up very, very, very close. Now, I've lost half of me with my mum. I've lost half of her. Half my soul's gone with her. But I'm going to fight for her. No matter what happens to me, I suffered a stroke last year due to stress and a hole in the heart and what the system had done to me. I had a gagging order placed on me, but not just myself, on the whole of my family. I said this to Matt Hancock, I'll go to prison if I have to get that truth out. Because why would anyone place me on a court order? My lawyers had to fight. When I lost my mum, they still wanted to keep me on a court order to silence me. Why? They knew the love I had for mum. The carers used to say, wow, you're a wonderful son. I said, no, I'm not. I'm just a son. For me, why am I wonderful? A son should love his mum. I'm not wonderful. I'm just a son. That's it for me. Now, when I phoned up on the Sunday, they said to me immediately, Tony, can we call you back in 5 minutes? I said, yeah, of course you can. I thought they must be busy. It's a care home. It's early morning. I'm pestering them again. So I said, yeah, of course you can. I start walking. My phone rings. It was the nurse manager who was on site that morning. I remember her name. I remember her character. She wasn't very nice at all through the two years my mum was in there, but I let that slip. I let that go. She was abrupt. She was arrogant.
Yeah, because you were fearful that it would rebound on your mum.
Yes. Now, she phoned me and she said to me, Tony, I'm really sorry. Your mum's been put on end of life. Even now I'm choking. I fell to the floor outside in the street and I was helped up. When I got there, they phoned my rest of my family and I got there. And we couldn't go in, obviously. Now, if they placed my mum or anyone's mum, she'd been put on end of life. Why wasn't we told you don't just go on end of life within an hour?
Yeah, exactly. I should tell you, Tony, that you are absolutely amongst friends. In fact, this platform, Brand New Tube, has been formed in memory of Mohammed Butt, who is the CEO, his mum, who was also placed in a similar situation to your mum. She was put on end of life. This platform is in tribute to her, in memory of her. So people here really understand your pain, Tony, and fully support what you're going through.
Tony describes his mum as the kind of person who would make food for the gas man when he came to read the meter. He believes that the introduction of Antonia's law would help him find some peace.
She had the most beautiful character. If you came into her home, no matter, she didn't even have to know you. You'd walk in and immediately she made you feel like one of the family. I don't want somebody else to go through what I've gone through, or my mum to go through in a care home, in a care setting.
Tony says he misses his mum every single day, but wants Antonia's law to be her legacy.
amazing film. I can see we're all watching it intently, very closely. I just want to ask initially, Linda, what did you think of that film? Was it the first time you've seen that film? I've seen it.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen clips of Tony talking on several different platforms before.
Yeah.
I saw him being interviewed by Dominique Samuels on Getter. She did a live stream with him a few weeks ago. So I've heard the story. I mean, it's just heartbreaking. We've got to stop this. We have to stop this. I mean, that's the only thing I can say about it.
You can talk to Tony directly because he's here with us.
I know.
Tony, Linda, Tony.
Yeah, Tony and I tweet together. We're often tweeting together. Yeah. So, so I've seen you. I saw you do the thing with Dominique. And you're still working with her, I see.
Yeah, there was at my house Tuesday, just gone. We're now Friday, aren't we? They were all here Tuesday filming. That's getting sorted out now as we speak. I've just sent some more info to them, and I've got lots on the horizon as well. And obviously, I've got my legal case, which is going on as well. That starts again. They've got until April, beginning of April, to speak up, to acknowledge. So it's a big, big case, and my lawyers are prepared to take it all the way.
I'm watching that with interest. Sorry. Yeah, go on, Jackie.
Yeah, I've watched that film many, many times. Every time it breaks my heart, obviously. But I'm looking at Kate. I'm watching her, analysing it. She analyzes it like I analyse it. Obviously, we feel the pain and the upset. It's awful. But I'm watching Kate like sussing it all out, Kate, what do you think of Tony's film?
Well, I think it's absolutely horrific because it's a piece in history that it's recorded what's happened to his mom. But let me tell you, when I was 21 years old, Tony, and this is to all your viewers, when I was 21, nearly 22 actually, I went and worked in a place that was it was called then the mentally handicapped, and they had some in there that was 16 and up, and I worked in a cottage which had older women in there, and they'd got like learning disabilities, and they weren't physically disabled. Most of them were mentally disabled. There were a couple of cerebral palsy, and when I left there, and I was young, so it was before my 23rd birthday by the time I left, I became a whistleblower. And upon leaving, I handed a letter to the head of the hospital and stated what I'd seen. Now, I knew of things that had happened from a charge nurse in his ward. One of the care assistants had smashed a plastic melamine plate over a patient's head. They used to steal from the patients. The patient in the cottage where I worked, on my days off, her family had brought her in for respite. And she was probably then in her 40s, and she'd been dragged from the room where she was on by her feet across the carpet on her back, and her back was covered in carpet burns. She was terrified to eat with the other ladies because she wasn't used to that. So when I came on duty, I fed her in a room. I saw an elderly lady who just was receiving morphine and midazolam with the worst pressure sore I've ever seen in my career. And when I went on duty, instead of just giving her more, I got her out of bed and got her upright in a chair. And she ate a bowl of crunchy nut cornflakes. I always remember it. And a cup of tea. Her name was Helen. I won't give her surname out. I saw a patient left in a wheelchair who was a Down syndrome because she'd wet herself. I mean, I could go on. So what I'm trying to say here is that this is the horror and the cruelty of man. And unfortunately, whenever you have anywhere where you have human beings with authority over other human beings, you will get several different types of personality, and the authoritarian types of personality will enjoy that authority, and not everyone is kind. And so this abuse, since I started nursing, this has always happened. Yeah. And what do we get with our government? We get this BS appeasement, this where they mitigate, where they go, we're going to have inquiries. It's not going to happen again. the Stafford inquiry. Now we've got the Gosport inquiry of 400 faulty syringe drivers, and what the nurses and doctors didn't realise when the first 2 patients died. They had to wait for another 398 minimum to die.
Yeah.
There is an authority at the moment. I will come out with the name because I've been working with Stuart Wilkie again on this, who's incidentally both his parents were murdered within 6 days of one
Yeah, I
another.
know Stuart. Yeah, I know Stuart.
Yeah, but what you've got here is you've got they've identified that people have died, and they're not looking to bring justice to that for those victims.
Yeah.
What they're looking for is to retrain the nurses. It doesn't matter how much training you put in place or you indeed remove, because what we're seeing now is these care homes will have just above the legal limits of having a registered member of staff if it's a nursing home, and the rest will be care assistants. So what you'll, and they'll bring in the district nurses to come in and do the nursing care. It doesn't matter how many people you put in, you will always get, unfortunately, the cesspit of those who enter that profession and don't really care. And then you will get those that it goes beyond not caring. They take some sadistic pleasure. Now, it doesn't matter whether you've got 10 wonderful staff. You only need one bad one. And, you know, to inflict harm. When I trained in Scotland, there was in the early 80s, 1984, there was an agreement with the RSPCA and social services that if one were called to a home and they had animals when they were called about children, or vice versa, they were called about children and they had animals, each of those societies would contact the other and report it, because when people are cruel to an animal, they'll be cruel to a human and vice versa.
Yeah.
Because it's about that. It's about when somebody is incapacitated, when somebody can no longer take care of their own activities of daily living. So when I watch that with Tony watching, the reason, of course, it's very emotive as we're watching it is because we're watching a woman and we see her son on the screen who has faced this because there's emotions involved. But I can assure you that right now, as we speak, somebody somewhere is being abused at the hands of their carer. Somebody is being murdered with a syringe driver. Somebody is being sexually abused by those. And you know, that's before we even start talking about how many children die at the hands of their parent or carer every week in the UK. It's above 2. And so, you know, unfortunately, one has to look at what is happening in our society. Do we have people, you know, my surname is from Iran, Shemi Irani. It's my ex-husband's surname, which was discussed that hung on to it. But people slag Iran off. But you look at the deterrence in their country. When somebody gets done for really heinous crimes, they drag a crane to their neighborhood. I'm not saying that I agree with everybody that gets it, but and they get hung at dawn in their neighborhood as a deterrent. Now, whether you think it's right or wrong or whatever, before we start criticizing another country, let's look at what is going to happen to the likes of those people who did that to Tony's mother. We've got this stupid inquiry that's now asking the NMC for their, you know, what would they do? Oh, we're going to retrain the nurses. To hell with retraining them.
England, with respect to the English, England's not known to be a very compassionate country towards.
No, we've got the worst human rights abusers, redcoats.
Can I just interrupt you now, because we've done, I think, over 2 hours of chat, which is amazing. But something that I really want to address is about the cowardice that has been going on in the last 3 years. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but a lot of people have not stepped up and been brave. There's a lot of cowards around, especially over the last 3 years. And my very, very good friend, Dr. McHongkong, and Monkey Boy, Monkey Boy in particular, has made this most amazing song. It sounds a bit country. Do you know it?
He needs to make one back. He needs to have a new character on his show.
No, he's fine.
Punk needs to have a nurse, an assassin nurse.
He's got a couple of like trans Miss Witty, but yeah, you're right. I'll pass on the message. But this actual his latest thing about this, watch it. It's about it's called Cowards in My Country. It's amazing.
Jackie, just before you show this, can I just
have to go shortly.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
I am also taking a legal case, and I just want to mention both Kate, you, Kate, and Jackie know these lads from ACT UK, the guys in Burgess Hill. They are helping me. They have been acting with me. So watch this space. I will be following Tony and taking a case against my mum. And just one other thing, very quickly, I know we're running out of time. My next door neighbour, who I only met a year ago when I moved here, I discovered that her granny was in the same care home as my mum, in the same dementia unit, and they murdered her too. So I just thought I'd throw that in. That's my next door. What's the chances of that? Obviously. Yeah. Anyway, back to your Dr. McConconk.
No, it's fine. Tony, have you got anything to say?
No, I think we've said everything, haven't we? You know.
Yeah. So let's play out with Cowards in My Country by Dr. McConconk and Monkey Boy. See you next week.
See you later.
Every day I'm mortified by the cowards in my country. And every day they fail to prove the points I make are wrong. They have their thinking done for them by some propaganda mouthpiece. And they'll slander those of us who saw the nonsense all along. They present their kids to pharma scum on great big shiny platters. Watch women's spaces compromised by mental bearded creeps. Come near my wife or children and